The views and opinions in the following program remain those of the producer or sponsor, and not those of Medford Community Cablevision, its staff, management, board of directors, or other affiliates.
Hello, sports fans, and welcome to another edition of Real Grass, Real Heroes. A look at the golden age of sports here in Boston when the game was played on real grass and the heroes were real heroes like Teddy Ballgame, Bob Cousy, Bill Russell, and all the rest of them. Today we've got a very special guest, an old friend of mine, and we don't see him often enough on television, and I wanted to see him there. He's a wealth of knowledge, the nicest guy in the world. He's our in-arena host for the Boston Celtics and the sports director for WILD, Coach Willie Maye. Coach, can you shake the hand and shook the hand?
Good to see you, Jim.
Oh, my God, it's good to have you here.
How's everything?
Terrific, terrific. I'm glad we finally got it. I've been trying to get you here for 6 months.
Well, you know, my schedule gets a little crazy, a little hectic because, you know, freelancing with Nesson and also with NBA TV and then the Celtics stuff, and just gets a little crazy. And I know we had some telephone issues, at least on my end. Yeah. But now I got all your numbers, so when you call me, I can call you back.
Good man, good man. You know, there's so much, you know, it breaks my heart when I pick up the Sunday paper and see nothing about the Celtics in it. And obviously it's because right now we should be seeing things about the Celtics. But with this foolish NBA lockout and whatever, do you know anything about what is actually going on, why it's happening, and so on and so forth? I can't picture the players looking for more money.
No, you know, actually, I hope the fans realize that it's the players who are making the concessions right now. And you got a few owners. I know Dan Gilbert and I think the Suns owner, they have been acting kind of crazy in this whole negotiation. So hopefully it'll all come to, you know, a nice meshing that blends. Then I get to see you more often, and then I get to, you know, do what I love doing each and every night, and that's, you know, being around the NBA.
Yeah, that's terrific that you're around there all the time. By the way, for you folks that don't know what Coach does at the arena, if any Celtics game that you go, all the action that happens, the shows and the interviewing of people and all that stuff, that's Will's domain, and Will is what makes it such an enjoyable evening, aside from the ball players on the court. And thank you very much for doing that, Coach.
Oh,
you know,
no doubt.
I go back way, way back to before Red Auerbach was here. I was at the game when Chuck Connors broke the backboard. Chuck Connors, he was Kevin Connors for the Celtics.
Yes.
And 3 left feet.
Wow.
But when the Celtics did get Red Auerbach, and then Bob Cousy came and everything else, and things started to get together, I've got trivia questions. Well, you know, I love to play trivia.
You love
Matter
trivia.
of fact, I'll tell you what, I'm going to toss out a trivia question right now. In 1956-57, that was the first Celtics championship. They had 2 rookies that year, Bill Russell and Tommy Heinsohn. Which one of them was drafted first? That's an easy enough question. Okay?
I like that.
Okay.
Let me give you a quick Red story.
Yeah?
When I first started covering the Celtics, the year they won the championship back in '81, I was the youngest media member at 20 years old. And I remember going into, I got my media pass, full season, and I'm walking into the locker room. Red said, "Hey, where are you going?"
Red
says this to me.
Yeah, that's him.
I said, going to do my job, Mr. Auerbach. Let me see that pass. Huh. Full season, huh? All right, I'll see you in there. You know, but he said, you look like you were 17.
Yeah.
And believe me, over the long career, we had a great friendship and miss him a lot.
Oh my God! If only people really knew the real. It was complex naturally. I remember one year I was down in Florida, and I know he loves spare ribs and everything.
Of course.
So I brought back some Bobby Rubino spare ribs with a quart of Bobby Rubino sauce. And so I brought it up to the offices there.
Sure.
Gave it to them. And I had some other business there anyway. So about a half hour later, when I was leaving, I'm on the elevator, and who comes on the elevator? Red. And so I said to him, how'd you like the spare ribs, Red? For Christ's sake, he says, they were cold. So I said, sorry. And that was it. He didn't say another word. I didn't say another word. We wrote a couple of stories up anyway. And he left. Now, about 2 or 3 weeks later, they were having some media thing, and they had the big pictures of Red Auerbach. And so I wanted to get 2 of them autographed. Okay. So I gave him one, and he autographed it. I said, Red, I don't want to be a pain in the neck. I said, would you mind autographing the second one? He said, well, you are being a pain in the neck. And then he autographed it, and he handed it to me, and then he says, thanks for the spare ribs. He remembered after 3 weeks,
That's how Red was,
But,
and he didn't forget anything. You would think that he forgot things, but he didn't forget anything. And let me tell you, I remember, sometimes when on the Fox broadcast, I would go to interview him. He's like, what are you messing with me for? I'm watching the game. And he still in his mid-80s into the game. And then we would leave him and things of that nature, and just had a great time. Good time.
There's so many of the guys through the years that if people really got to know them, it'd be something like Larry Bird. Larry Bird is the greatest guy in the world, and there's so many people that think he was a snot or something or else.
No.
And people used to, as a matter of fact, I think 1 or 2 of the players might have even said something, or somebody would say, who does he think he is interviewing, on the bench instead of at his locker? Well, you know the answer to that. It was very simple. Right. If he interviewed at his locker, the media, you remember, there wasn't enough room. There were 50, 60 people would stand for 20 minutes waiting for him. If he came right to his locker, then 4 players on each side of him would have been inconvenient.
And would have been upset because he probably was the guy who changed that whole thing. I mean,
did he ever?
Moving from the locker room, he sit right at the edge of the table or in the middle of the trainer's table, so everybody had an advantage to ask him a question and made everybody.
And he stayed there forever.
Happy. He would.
No more. Okay, last question. You never heard that. Now, many, many times, more often than not, and then some, when he was on TV, my face was right behind him holding the camera. You may recall that.
Of course.
And people used to say, why are you always hogging it? Well, while everybody was standing there doing nothing, I was behind talking to ML, to Danny, to Kevin, to Max. And then when Larry would come out, I'd just turn around and
there he was.
Right there. It was simple as can be.
It's all about logistics, Jim.
You got it, man. You got it. But I'll never forget the first time that Johnny Most, the last 6.5 years of his life, I spent more time with anybody else because I was always up late.
Right.
I remember one time, shortly after his stroke, we were shooting the breeze at one of the events there, and he had to leave, and he apologized for having to cut the conversation short. He says, how late are you up at night? He says, I'll call you tonight. I said, I'm late as late as you on. He says, I might call you about midnight.
No problem.
Sure enough, about midnight, pick up the phone. What are you doing up so late? And so we'd talk for about 15 minutes, and he says, if you're still up in an hour, give me a call. And that's the way it went. Many times it went till about 5 in the morning.
Right.
So now, the first day that he came back, I mean, after the operation, everything, the first game he went to, I took him to the game. And I had a big Lincoln Town car, and his wheelchair could fit in the back and all. So now as we're coming down the ramp, and we started early, as we're coming down the ramp of the old garden, everybody saw him, and everybody come running over. And he said, they still remember me. I said, what, are you kidding me? They still remember you? So, now don't forget, he had to sign autographs with his left hand because the right hand was paralyzed. And so while he's autographing, a bunch of cars get behind, and a few of them start beeping their horn. So I get out, the first one is Larry. Now the rest of them are beeping their horn. And I told Larry, I said, I got Johnny Most in the car. He said, I'll move as quick as I can. He says, take your time with him. He went back and he told them all, and there was silence for about 5 minutes, which seemed like about 20, 30 minutes, you know?
Of course.
And I thought that was so great. I'm thinking, Larry is the one that did it.
Oh, yeah. And I mean, and still to this day, I mean, I've been so fortunate, you know, in my broadcast career. You know, I worked with Johnny his last year with the Celtics when I was the Celtics and the Bruins studio host on WEI.
Yep.
And before every home game, Johnny and I did a piece together, and then we would go right into the game. Also, you know, fortunate enough to work with Bob Wilson when he was broadcasting the Bruins, and Johnny Busick. You know, I mean, we just had some great times, and man, miss those days.
Yeah. You know, I remember talking about missing those days. Larry's first game back as coach of Indiana, I got there like about 3.5 hours early.
Of course.
I chatting with him, you know, alone. And I said, how do you feel coming back? He said, this is the most important game of my life. Most important game, you know? And he said, if this was the old Garden, he says, I wouldn't have come. So I wouldn't be here. He says, that's how much, you know, he wouldn't have been able to hold his emotions. That's how much those years meant to him.
And you know what he learned, too, as a coach, from watching the coaches that he played for, how they brought the best coaches there to be right there for him. And he himself, as a coach, brought the best, you know, talented coaches to be his assistants to help teach him things that he didn't know and things of that nature. And it just makes such a success story.
And he listened to them.
No doubt.
Listened to the great minds. Rick Carlisle. Rick Carlisle became, I think he's the best coach. I think he's going to be eventually the next Celtics coach. He wanted to be here, you know, when Doc came.
Yeah, and who knows when Doc's 5 years are up, you know, it may be Rick Carlisle's time.
No doubt in my mind, he's destined to be here. He's
done very well, and so happy for him. And when I was covering the finals this year, you know, got to see him. Never forgets you. Hey, Willie, Coach, give me a hug.
Did you talk about he used to sit, after he retired, he used to sit next to me. I sat up in the old Garden. I sat near Johnny, and he was sitting next to me for several of the games, and we'd shoot the breeze, you know, and talk about his piano playing.
Yeah, I just tease him because we call him by his nickname, Flipper, because he had the big feet, you know. And but he remembers his roots from when, you know, he was at Worcester Academy, and then matriculating to Maine, Virginia, and all that stuff. So New England's always been a big part of him since his teenage years, and then, of course, playing with that memorable Celtics team.
Sure. You know, the talk about Flipper, the nickname, there were several players that had nicknames, like the Duck.
Yeah.
Do you remember how he got his nickname, the Duck?
I don't know how Don Chaney got that nickname.
Because he did a perfect imitation of Donald Duck.
Is that how he got it?
He did a perfect.
Wow.
If I'm not mistaken, I think it was Russell that gave him the nickname.
Wow.
And but
I have to ask Satch how he got Satch. You got the answer?
No, I haven't got the answer.
Man, hey,
you know,
I'm gonna have to ask Satch. And congrats to him going into the Hall of Fame for all his great years of service to the league, and bringing in the rookie symposium and all the great things to help make these players, you know, become men.
People don't know, but when he was in college, he was a big scorer. And I think it was in his second year with the Celtics, he was feeling comfortable and everything. In one game, he scored about 25 points. He went on a string of about 5 games scoring in the 20s. The only problem is we lost 3 of them. Red never said a word to him. And finally, after, about 5 games, maybe 6 games or whatever, he just went to Satch and said, do you want to be a high scorer or do you want to win championships? And that changed Satch's whole life. Okay, he was willing to go for the team. I tried to impress this on Big Baby, which is a crime. He's going by the wayside, I believe.
Yeah,
and it's a shame. If we could certainly use him for what he can do.
I think a lot of these players now, and believe me, I'm not calling out anyone specifically, but they have been given so much, so they don't sacrifice like a lot of these other guys used to. And you have to remember, we're going to teach you. Just listen to what we tell you. We don't want to see you fail or anything. We want you to win and be successful and win more championships. But sometimes the ego doesn't allow them to take in, other people or outside sources, who want to see you successful too.
Now last year he kept on taking those 17-footers. He believes that he should be starting ahead of who,
Yeah,
Can you imagine that?
Yeah, but the thing is, it's like, no, you're not a true forward because he's such a tweener. He's like 6'5",
He's a big
6'6".
Charles. No, he's 6'8".
Yeah, but that's what they listen at.
Charles Barkley was only 6'4".
Right, and so that's the whole thing with it. It's like, just sit back, get in where you can fit in, and enjoy the ride. Because, before you know it, your career is over and gone.
But to think that you should start ahead of Kevin Garnett, is he nuts? It's a shame. You know what it reminds me of? Years ago, Paul Westphal. In Westfall's third year, this is before your time, I believe.
No, I was around. It was before it was as a sportscaster, but I was watching those games. And I love Paul Westphal. And kind of like you said, he started thinking that he should have been starting. And
first of all, he held out. He wanted more money than Red was, offering him. And he said publicly, cardinal sin, can't badmouth the team, in public. Publicly, he says, I should be starting ahead of this guy, number 17. He wanted to start ahead of John Havlicek. And so Red traded him. Every time Red made a trade, we won a championship. Every time he traded with Phoenix, we won a championship.
No doubt. That trade, and then when we made the other one, picking up DJ, we won championships. And can't be mad at that.
that one, we stole it. We stole DJ.
Come on. You get DJ for Rick Roberson. I'll make that trade anytime.
We also got a first-round pick, don't forget.
Wow.
Greg Kite.
That's right. The man with the hands.
I know. Him and Rick Roby, Larry used to pound on him mercilessly about free throws.
Oh, yeah.
But, oh, my God, some of the game. Now, when Kevin Gamble was with the team, okay,
who was last year assistant coach down in Providence.
Is that right?
No doubt.
What a nice kid he was.
One of the best.
And
Oscar.
At any rate, at that time, the show, Bob Newhart show, where he was.
I know the show you're talking
about. He was an innkeeper in Vermont,
right?
And had the 3 crazy brothers.
Right.
Hi, my name's Larry. This is my brother Darryl.
Right.
It's my other brother Darryl. I got Larry standing next to Kevin McHale and Kevin Garnett, and I said, "Hey, I got a great idea. I'd love to have you guys on TV, the 3 years, and Larry can say, hi, my name's Larry. This is my teammate Kevin. This is my other teammate Kevin." And so McHale, started laughing, and Kevin says, He could see it coming, He says, But I'll tell you, 3 guys I would love to have on the stage at the same time is Larry, Danny, and Kevin.
That would be like a comedy show.
Larry wouldn't do all the talking, but he would be the one most, eventually they'd all.
Well, he would. Because Danny would be trying to make up for lost time over the years. But Danny, you're still little brother. They don't care who you are or anything. You're still little brother.
Yeah, absolutely. But God, some of those teams, you know, when I did the show with Johnny Most the year before he died, we did the show for about 7, 8 months. And every night I would have a different Celtic on, and to play with Russell, one of the old timers. And every time it came up, eventually the same question, Larry or Russ? And they all said exactly the same thing. They said, Russ made us all look better, but somehow Larry actually makes them play better. And Kevin McHale backed it up. You know, I said, look, I said, if it wasn't for Larry, you'd be the man. He said, no, he said, if I wasn't playing with Larry, I wouldn't be half as good as I am. And he didn't say half as good. I think he said I wouldn't have half the stats that I had. But at any rate,
those were some great years for us, Jim.
Yeah.
I mean, to see what they did, how they did it, and man, I'd relive it again if I could. And I'm sure you would too.
Yes, I would. Absolutely. You know, here's a picture, by the way, of. Is there any way we can zoom in on this, Steve? Okay. This is a picture of the first championship team, 1957. And at the luncheon that they had a few years ago for commemorating the 50th anniversary of that team, all the guys were there and all. And I was saying earlier, it was a funny story. One of the guys that was on that team, at least, but not for the whole season, was Togo Palazzi. Well, I got very friendly with Togo about 18 years ago and talked to him often, but the first time that I met him, I was asking him, I says, Togo, when you were in college, you were my favorite player. I says, and it broke my heart when you were traded from the Celtics. I says, what happened? And he said, well, he says, that was my fault. He says, I come in one day, middle of December, and on the roster, on the board is, I'm on the inactive list. He says, I was a young, emotional kid, and I went through the roof and went up to the office, and Walter Brown says, geez, he says, I don't know. He says, but Red's out of town. He says, talk to him tomorrow. No. I said, if you ain't going to play me, I want to get traded. And Walter, who's a nice, kind-hearted guy, he says, look, he says, wait until, he says, look, he says, somebody must want me. And Walter said, well, Jesus, Togo, everybody wants you, but wait for Red. No, I want to get traded. So Walter said, where do you want to go? And he says, Syracuse. I want to play with Dolph Shea. So he says, okay. Picked up the phone, Danny Bayasoni, the owner. Yep, okay, boom. He says, okay, you're with Syracuse. So now when Red came back, he says, Togo, please, no. I had plans for you. I needed a roster spot. He says, and I know what you can do, but Lou Seropoulos just came off an injury, a back operation. He said, I had to find out what he could do, so I don't want to put him on the injury. That blows a whole year. And so that's why, I needed the roster spot. So that was after the trade was complete, nothing he could do about it. So now I said to Togo, who do you need the roster spot for? And Togo hung his head, and he says, Bill Russell. I says, are you kidding me? And poor Togo, he blushed. Togo blushed. And so now, when this event came up, I was the only one there that was at that seventh game in 1957. And everybody left, and it was just the team and me. So I said to Togo, I says, Togo, did you tell Russ the story? Nah, he says, you tell him. I says, no, I says, you tell him. So now Russ says, what story? So Togo told him the story. Russell let out with that laugh, that trade-back laugh. Everybody died laughing.
When Russ laughed, it came way down there.
Did it ever. So now, when they stopped laughing, now Russell says, now I got a story for all of you guys. He says, in 1956, when I first came to the team, they were in the practice of making travel arrangements and hotel arrangements for the entire year for each player.
Right.
He says, so my entire rookie year, I was Togo Palazzi. And they kept on saying, what the heck is a Togo Palazzi? And that was it. And now you know the rest of the story. But that was so funny. And from that, there were so many stories that the guys were were picking up on and remembering this, remembering that. But when I was doing the show, and I'm going to shut up after this one. I want to hear. I want you to talk some more. Will. But I had Bob Branham on the show.
Of course, I know Bob.
Now, people don't remember this, and a lot of the young timers don't even know about. How do you like this? Lesketoff, Bill Lesketoff.
Jim.
Jim Lesketoff, Bill Lesketoff. Jim Lesketoff. And some people say, why do they have Lusky on there instead of his number?
Right.
I said, because his number was 18. I said, so what are you going to put? 18 for Jim Lesketoff and then put Dave Cowens?
Right.
So that was it. I said, but he was not the first policeman. Bob Branham was.
Yeah.
Now, Bob Branham was about 6'7", about 280 pounds.
Big guy.
And
he
he
and I
was
were
tough.
great friends when he was coaching Brandeis University.
Yep.
When I used to do some announcing and broadcasting out there.
What people don't know is in college in 1948, he led the nation in scoring.
So.
But when Red made the move for him, now we're going to have to go backwards. But when Red made the move for him, we'll talk later about how the move came about. He told Branham, he says, look, he says, I got a good, fast team, but they're light, and people keep on whacking them around. He says, I want you to go out there, and if somebody starts whacking our guys, I don't want you to go out and hit them. You go out and hit their star player. And so that's where the term policeman come in. Now, getting back to Dolph Shays. Dolph Shays was a great, great guy. He was a Larry Bird. I mean, he did it all. And they had a guy named Red Roker who was a butcher. And Red Roker, one particular game, Red Roker, he whacked one of the guys. It was probably Ed McCauley. And so immediately in goes Branham. And the first thing he does is, going up for a rebound, he breaks Dolph Shays' nose with an elbow. Ooh. And Shays shakes his head and he goes running over and he cold cocks Red Roker. He didn't cold cock him, he just hit him a shot in the chin, He says, leave the guys alone. But anyhow, that was something. But go ahead, and I got another story to tell you about Branham in a minute.
Sure.
But I mean, you got a ton of stories about all those old guys.
I'll tell you, for me, but a lot of people didn't know, like, how did I get my start? And I tell them, radio, which got me over to television. Mm-hmm. And when I was at WILD, I got there in 1984. And we started being creative and stuff. Mm-hmm. We started having what we call guest DJs. We would have the mayor. We'd have the governor. Then we started having sports athletes. Yeah. So, Chief.
I was going to say, you must have had the Chief on.
Dennis Johnson would come by. We have Kevin McHale. Larry called in. I mean, just different folks. Mm-hmm. And it was just fun stuff. And, some of them would be reading my sportscast. I'd type it out for them. And our studio wasn't that big, Jim, but we just had such great stuff going on that we wound up winning Boston's Best Morning Show, mm-hmm. Boston Magazine in 85, and just because of the creativity and stuff of bringing in the guest DJs and of course all the sports teams doing so well and us having access to a lot of the key athletes and stuff. So it was a great, great time. And then, next thing you know, you're doing things with them and you go into their house and all that great stuff. So just a great, great time.
I know. The story about Branham that I was going to tell you, when I was making arrangements to be on the show, it was the night before, and he said, look, tomorrow night I have to be at a party, wedding, something at the country club. I'm going to give you the private number. You call me up at exactly 7:15. Our show went from 7 to 8. Call me up at exactly 7:15, and we'll go on. So that fit perfectly. And he says, and don't forget. He said, I'll be mad. He says, don't forget. He says, I want to do this for Johnny. So now when he gets on, it was only supposed to be a 15-minute segment. It went the whole hour. Okay? And Johnny eventually said to him, he says, Bob, tell us a story about the horse. And Bobby says, I don't know what you mean. No, come on, you know the story. I mean, he said, no, I don't remember it. And he says, Bob, he said, remember, come on now, don't be bashful. You remember it. And he says, well, he says, you hit the horse. And he said, he was embarrassed that he hit a poor defenseless animal. But he said, the horse was trying to kick my daughter and then trying to push her against, crush her against the thing. It was an honorary mare. Right. The horse was a female.
Wow.
And it was just ornery. Wow. He said, so he panicked and he punched it in the jaw. And he said, punched him in the... By the way, this is 25 years before Blazing Saddles, Jesus. When Alex Karras knocked out the horse in the movie.
Right.
He says, punch the horse. He says, you knocked the horse out. He says, how was I to know she had a glass jaw? And put a little levity in it, and then we segued a little bit. But some of the stories that come out, almost all the shows went a full hour with these guys.
Sure.
Gene Conley, for God's sakes, he came back and did a second one. Mm-hmm. I know, and the poor guy, I've been trying to reach him for several months. His wife is very sick, and Gene wasn't in the best of health either. When they moved up from Florida, they moved to New Hampshire. One of his daughters is up there, and she's a nurse. But I've called him a number of times, and knowing Gene, he just doesn't like to talk about bad stuff to people, So anyhow, that's that. But Gene Conley is one of the best, one of the greatest. People think that he was Bill Russell's backup. He wasn't Bill Russell's backup. He could do minutes on his own.
Of course. But
when Bill did need a breather, he could give him a breather. But many times they were in there together. But one great guy, and still the only man in the history of professional sports to have world championship rings in 2 different major sports. He was a pitcher for the Braves when they won the championship in '57, and then he had 3 rings with the Celtics.
Right.
From 58, 59, 60, and 61.
Good stuff. Amazing stuff.
Oh, but some of the stories that came up to that. And John, all I ever wanted to do was bring some dignity for Johnny.
Sure.
And so when he would come on, and he's at the top of his game, and if he started to fade even a little bit, I caught it, and then I would jump in. And then when he was ready, he'd jump back in. So it always looked like he was at the top of his game. Well, he probably couldn't talk more than 15 minutes, 10 minutes at a stretch.
Yeah, Johnny's son, Jamie, and I are great friends who...
I was talking to Jamie last week,
done books and worked for the NBA for years. Also, his daughter, Andy.
There's one of them.
Great friends,
This is one great book, and anybody out there got a chance to okay, it's High Above Courtside, The Lost Memoirs of Johnny Most. And I got a couple of stories in there, myself. But boy, oh boy, it still ticks me off. John, one of the things the day before he died, he had said to me many times or through the years, he said, I don't care if I get into the Hall of Fame or not, but he says, don't ever stop trying to get me up in the rafters with my boys. Chick Hearn, when he was in the hospital, all the calls that came into the Celtics office, they, fluffed them off to me. And Chick Hearn was one of the calls. And so Chick, we talked for about 10 minutes, and he said, you let it be known, he says, I'm not going to go into the Hall of Fame to try to, want to put me in. I refuse to go in before Johnny goes in. He says, and he gave me his private number. He says, when you go to see Johnny, call me on the number. And so the next day I went in to see Johnny. We called him, gave him the phone, and they talked for about a half an hour or so.
Chick Hearn was a great guy, too.
He was great.
Loved Johnny. Great respect that they had for each other. And I remember the year, probably it was early 2000s when the Celtics came close to getting back to the finals, and it would have been the Celtics and the Lakers instead of New Jersey, and the Lakers in the finals. And I saw Chick, and he's like, Willie, man, I would love to have seen just one more go at it. The Celtics and Lakers, do their thing. But he was a great, great guy, too.
And by the way, when he did go into the Hall of Fame, it was after he had died. True to his word, he refused. I heard for at least 3 years, he just kept on saying no. Right. Refused. But yeah, he was something else. You know, I've got a long-standing, not a feud, so to speak, but we keep on hearing that the Lakers have 15 World Championships. The Los Angeles Lakers have 15. The Celtics have 17. The Los Angeles Lakers do not have 15. They only have 9.
They claim they have 16, you know, because they did win another one, but they only. You're right. They only won 9 in LA.
The Minneapolis Lakers had it.
Yeah.
You know, and there's a trivia question. Everybody says, you know, the only ones to win 3 World Championships in a row, it was Red Auerbach, and then it was, I want to call him the idiot, the hatchet man out there that belongs in jail. You know, their coach, the Lakers coach.
Oh, Phil Jackson.
Phil Jackson. He personally sent Ron Artest out to do the butcher job on those guys, because that's the way he played when he was with New York. Mm. And you remember the game when I just got a mental block. I got so aggravated. But help me out. Who got 8 3-pointers in a row?
For
Ray
Allen.
Ray Allen. Ray Allen. But after that game, interviewing him, and somebody said, "Do you have an answer? You know, Ray Allen can kid out there." He says, "Don't worry." He says, "He's never going to do that to us again." He says, "Believe me, he ain't." The very next game, Ron Artest is guarding him. Ron Artest is not supposed to be guarding him. He went out there and boom, hit him in the knee. You know, with his knee. You remember, you saw it. Black and blue and purple and yellow on his push-off leg. And that was the end of that. And he also did the same thing to Perk.
Oh, yeah.
In Game 6, he did that on purpose.
Well, I felt the Perk play, you know, I felt as though it was a dirty play.
Absolutely.
That Kobe hurt him on purpose.
You get 15 yards. If you're playing football, it's 15 yards and you get thrown out of the game.
And the same with the whole situation this year when we played Miami. You know, I mean, I love and respect D. Wade as a player, but that was a dirty play that he did to Rajon Rondo.
Yes, it was.
His mother and I were talking about it, Amber Rondo, and we were talking about it, and she and her family feel the same.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. My God, it gets so aggravating to see. We don't play that way. Simple as that. But where's the hell are the referees to protect these guys? It makes me sick. Favorite top 3 players, Celtic players of all time.
Favorite top 3. Let's see.
For whatever reason.
I might have to give you. You might have to let me do top 5. How about starting 5? How about that?
Easy.
All right.
Well, starting 5 is too tough.
I'm going to go in any particular order. Larry, Robert, DJ, Russ, because I got to know him, you know, as a person.
He's got to be there anyway.
No doubt. And it's a toss-up between Paul Pierce and because I had to put somebody in Kevin, it'd probably be right up in there also. And when I say Kevin, I mean McHale.
Yeah, I understand.
So if I was doing it that way, and I mean, I could sit here all day and give you even more because Hondo I love to death. KG, you know, I mean, Ray Allen. I mean, come on. Class act.
Tommy Heinsohn.
No doubt. Tommy, Kuz. I mean, I was so fortunate and blessed enough to work with those guys, you know, just about every night. And, I mean, the love for those guys is immeasurable.
You know, in 1996, the 50th anniversary of the NBA and the Celtics' 50th anniversary, I think there were 4 or 5 reporters were asked to write a story for the program book. I was one of them. And I said, what do you want me to write? And they said, whatever you want. I said, Bob Cousy, the NBA's first superstar. To me, a superstar is somebody who puts fannies in the seats.
Right.
And Walter Brown himself said, if Coos did not come to the Celtics, he said, I would not have been able to meet payroll for the 51 season. He said, because attendance went up in every game that Coos played in Boston Garden, attendance was over 50% higher, and every game they played around the league, attendance went up 50%. So if not for that, the Celtics are not the Boston Celtics. There is no Bill Russell. There is no Larry Bird. There is no 17 World Championships. So that's why I wrote the story. And but at any rate, okay, this isn't the one. But I never asked for autographs, you know. But this one here, I had to. And so when I brought it to Coos and asked him, and I've got it at home, and I asked him if he would autograph it. And he said, sure. And he said, by the way, he says, you know this fellow Jim Tuberosa? He said, I'd like to have him autograph. I said, Bobby, I said, I'm Jim Tuberosa. He didn't know my last name was Tuberosa, you know, because I'd known him for a few years.
But that's the way he was, a class act, a gentleman.
Well, I'll tell you how classy he was. 4 days later, I get a note from him. The next day, he went to Florida, but he got my name, address, and if you've ever seen a stationery, it's embossed stationery, and it's very distinct. Bob Cousy and so on. And he sent me a nice little note. He said, you know, dear Jim, Missy and I want to thank you so very much for the kind words, this and that, and so on. And of course, that's in a vault.
Of course.
And that's going to be in my will to my nephew.
No doubt.
And everything else. Here's something else. This is a one of a kind. This is. Steve? Can you zero in on this? Okay, I guess we won't be able to. Not. Okay. Well, at any rate, the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. But in 1991, when we had an affair, a big affair at the World Trade Center for Johnny Most, and Bill Weld, who was the governor at that time, proclaimed it Johnny Most Day. And he says, whereas the Boston Celtics have brought much joy to the citizens of the Commonwealth by winning a record 16 NBA titles, and Johnny Most has been behind the microphone for each one of these world titles, and whereas Johnny Most has shared his unique broadcasting skill with millions of Celtics fans over the years by way of radio, and has upheld the finest of traditions of impartiality, fairness, and restraint, and contributed much to Celtics dynasty, and whereas so on and so forth. He says, and whereas John Havlicek stole the ball, Johnny Most stole our hearts. And it's signed by William F. Weld and Mike Conley. And this is a one of its kind because Johnny, I gave it to Johnny, and he autographed it and he gave it to me. And he says, and thank you. And he thanked me so much, you know, for it. But that's one of my most prized possessions. But, you know, I was saying Tommy Heinsohn. People never stop to think about this, but I think Tommy was the leading scorer on that first championship team, but it was not uncommon. In the clinching Game 7, I think he had something like 37 points and 26 rebounds.
Yeah, some.
He allowed Russ to do, in my mind, he allowed Russ to do the things that Russell would go out 18, 19 feet and intimidate the ball carrier. Well, somebody had to be in the hole, and he would call, you know, the signals from the weak side and who would shift over and everything. These guys were all geniuses.
Right.
They all knew the game of basketball.
No doubt.
And Tommy said years ago, he said, well, yeah, we knew the game of basketball. He says, because Red wouldn't let us on the court if we didn't know the game of basketball, you know. But how many times you'll see a guy maybe gets in trouble with the ball at a crucial time, and he'll call a timeout. You know, so it doesn't wind up a jump ball. That's just knowing the game.
No doubt. And I remember Red said, look, I didn't have a lot of plays. I just told him, move the ball. And he said, once it was in Kuz's hands, guys nowhere to go. They knew how to fill lanes and everything else. He said, I didn't call any plays. So just go. Get the ball and go.
You know, our back used to say something that was so simple, but the truth, he says, nobody can outrun a pass.
It's true.
When we would go to the games, back in the late 50s, the 60s, the 70s, we used to love to sit up in section 99 so we could look down and watch the play. I can't tell you how many times off a made shot, the Celtics got a fast break.
Right.
Because boom, the ball would get down court and never touch the floor.
It come out of the net. They grab it out of the net.
Yeah.
Go.
Just everybody, ran their lanes. Everybody knew where they were going.
It's beautiful.
Unbelievable. You got some favorite moments through the years, Coach?
Whew, man. Probably, my first year, of course, back in '81. Here I am, a kid right out of high school, first year of college, and new radio station came about in '81, WCAS, which is in Cambridge. It was 740 on the dial. I started off as an intern, and then they offered me the sports directorship, and then stayed there for 2.5 years and transitioned over to WILD and started not just covering that team, but covering all of our teams, the Red Sox, the Patriots, even doing some Bruins stuff. So but I think being on the broadcast team for the 15 seasons with Mike and Tommy, and also winning the 3 Sports Emmy Awards, traveling the country and in the world, doing various things, the Olympics, and and then I think in this last little section is when I got the email after we won the '08 championship and said, "You will be receiving a championship ring."
Wow.
And that was
wow.
The cherry on top.
One of my favorite moments through all the years, and I have to say one of them, but you'll remember this game against Indiana. It was the deciding game of the playoffs. Mm-hmm. And we were up by 7 points going into the end of the second period, and Larry, diving for a ball, banged his head. Mm. He doesn't come out for the third period.
Yes.
And now we're getting whacked around. And now all of a sudden we're down by 7 points, and the future doesn't look good. And who was the bad guy for Indiana? Chuck Person?
Oh, yeah.
All of a sudden, Larry came running on the court. The crowd went wild. 7 minutes and 47 seconds by the clock. As the crowd started, I said, they're not going to be able to play. You remember?
Of course.
They're not going to be able to play. And so I made a note of the time. It was 7 minutes and 47 seconds before they could start. And the first thing Larry does is grab a rebound, start a fast break, goes down, and he finishes off the fast break. Mm-hmm. They throw the ball in, he steals the ball. And then when they come back the other end, Person grabs a rebound from a missed Celtic shot, and Larry stole it away from him. Mm. And I think he stuck his tongue out at Person.
He might have.
And we came down, and we wind up winning the game.
Yeah, that was the season. That was the most interesting season for me because that was the year that I was the radio host for the team and for the Bruins. So we were in the Strouss Center right in Charlestown where we broadcast.
Mm-hmm, yeah, I remember.
Stuff for. So I wasn't there physically. Mm-hmm. That bothered me. But I was still doing what I loved doing. We were on 100 radio stations nationwide for all the Celtic games and the Bruins games, and I remember that game just like you remember it right now, like it was yesterday.
There's one other game that I forgot it when I just remembered it. It was a Sunday afternoon, and we were playing Portland.
Okay.
And with something like 48 seconds left, we're down by 8 points. And all of a sudden, and I forget what started off, but you saw there was determination in Larry's face, his demeanor, and everything. And he willed those guys, and they tied up the game. They went to overtime, and again, it was close and close, and we're fighting, we're scrapping, and Portland was scrapping too.
Of course.
I remember Kevin Gamble, Larry fed him a nice, about a 17-footer to tie up the game going into the third overtime, and finally we would not lose. They piled on Larry's back, and everybody, he energized everybody.
I mean, the heart of a lion and a champion, and I mean, you know, it was a sad day when we lost Larry in terms of his career, you know, because you know and I know he always left it all on the court, and you know, he has so many injuries down the stretch, you know, from the feet, the heels, the ankles, and the back, and the knees.
I know that was a crime.
Really wore him out.
You know, my cameraman has given me a signal that I never saw before. How much more time do we have?
You said you got 1 minute to wrap it up.
We got 1 minute. I keep on telling you, Steve. I don't know what that means. Speak English.
That's my man, Steve.
You know, these things go by so quickly, and today with Coach Willie Maye, it was the fastest that I've ever seen. Coach, thank you very much.
Yeah,
We're gonna have you back. Got to have you back.
Yes, sir.
You know,
anytime.
and you got to be back. And we still got so much more to talk about. As we're talking, I'm thinking of more Celtic memories and more Celtic things that I want to talk about. And I firmly believe that the kids today don't know about the way the games used to be, and there's so many of them that don't even know who Johnny Most is.
Oh, no doubt.
You know, it's a crime. But at any rate, thanks for being with us, Coach.
My pleasure.
And all you loyal fans out there, thanks so much for tuning in, and hope to see you again next time. We'll be back. But for now, the name of the show is Real Grass, Real Heroes, a look at the golden age of sports in Boston. My name is Jim Tuberosa. Thanks for watching. See you next time.